والدرجة الرفيعة وبعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
Would you like to sponsor the Azan? If so, give us a call on 01582 481 810 or email us on info@inspirefm.org.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6 o'clock.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another edition of Friday Night Live on Friday, the 22nd of November, 2024. I'm your host, Abdul Akbar, and we're bringing out to the good people of Luton and surrounding areas tonight, and also to the good people of Sheffield, Nottingham, Derby, and Peterborough, and the Midlands through our partner stations across the nation. Welcome to all of you tuning in to the special edition of Friday Night Live, where we're beaming out, of course, on YouTube Live as well tonight, and on Facebook Live as well. So you can watch our newly formatted program as usual every week and listen also on the radio as well. So don't forget, you can go onto YouTube and search for Inspire FM Luton and click on the live tab to watch me and my guests live on tonight's program. Actually, I talk about guests, but believe it or not, I have my co-host who is also tuning in right now, and he is none other than Saiful Islam Saab. Saiful Islam Saab, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, brother?
I'm doing very well, Saiful Islam Saab. Good to have you back on the program, co-hosting with me and sharing some of the work that we're about to do, especially on the news. So coming up, Saiful Islam Saab, of course, and I'm going to get your perspectives on this as well, is the no-brainer of a warrant that the ICC has issued against Benjamin Netanyahu and his colleague Gallant as well, and the Hamas commander, who apparently is dead. So I'm not sure how useful that's going to be. So that's coming up. And also, we're talking about Islamophobia Month in around 30 minutes' time. How's your week been, Saif Islam Saab?
Oh, busy, alhamdulillah. Particularly today has been hectic, today afternoon, but alhamdulillah, tomorrow is Saturday, so I can rest a bit tomorrow then.
Absolutely. I started new work actually in the education sector after 20 years this week, so I had a very busy week as well. I can tell you that much.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Well, listeners, guess what? We've got an action-packed show for you lined up this evening on Friday, the 22nd of November. And in fact, I want to go straight into our top story this evening, where we are talking about the quite extraordinary circumstances here where an arrest warrant has been issued by the ICC. And Saif Islam Saab, before I go to my guests who are also joining us in a moment, can you just help us understand who the ICC is? I mean, how significant is the ICC in the world?
Well, it's the International Criminal Court, isn't it? And it's got, I think, 124 members. And so the decisions made by the ICC, as far as I understand, with my limited understanding, because my field is somewhere else, as you know, it's supposed to be binding, I think, on its members, the decisions made by the ICC. But of course, historically, we can see that there have been many instances when ICC decisions have been ignored by many countries, and especially in a situation like this, I actually question its enforceability.
Interesting. Well, I'll pause there for a moment and come back to your thoughts as we also introduce our other two guests on tonight's program. Joining us is no stranger to this program. He's been on it many times before, and we really appreciate his insights. It's Dr. Maury Ram. Good evening, Dr. Ram. How are you doing this evening?
Good evening. As always, delighted to be here. I'm very good. Thank you.
Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us. And also joining us is Professor Kamal Hawash, who's a Palestinian academic and analyst. Good evening to you, Professor Hawash. Are you there? All right, we're going to try to get Professor Hawash's line working.
I am
there
with
you are.
you. I'm sorry. Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're all well. Nice to
Walaikum
be with
salam
you.
wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair for joining us, Professor Hawash. Let me start with you, Professor Hawash, if I may. As a Palestinian academic and analyst, your reactions to this quite extraordinary news that there are arrest warrants now issued by the ICC. How significant is this?
I think it's a historic decision in relation to the Palestine-Israel conflict, because, say, 30 years ago, nobody would have thought that an Israeli prime minister would be hauled in to be brought to The Hague, to be tried, and if it's successful, would go to prison until he dies. Nobody thought that would happen. So it is really quite a historic day. I agree with your co-host about the question of enforceability, but the Palestinians have tried everything, and one of the things that they ended up going for, because they did not get justice, they did not get their rights, is to pursue the legal track. And I'll just remind you that Israel called the referral to the ICC legal terrorism. I mean, just think of the meaning of that. Nothing that Palestinians can do is legitimate as far as Israel is concerned, except leaving. That's what they really want. So it is a historic day. There are lots of hurdles along the way before we see Netanyahu and Gallant in front of them. And I think they should be preparing a prison camp for all the Israeli leaders and generals and so on who've been involved in the most horrendous crimes that we have seen in this century.
Thanks for sharing that. Dr. Ram, let me go to you. As an Israeli lecturer at Newcastle University, one of the things that Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned in his recent statement was that this particular order by the ICC was anti-Semitic. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, thanks again. Directly responding to that comment, I'm doing my best not to be cynical here, as I'm surprised he went there, right? This is his comfort zone, immediately reverting to the anti-Semitic card. I don't know much how to respond to that. It's, in my view, quite ridiculous, comparing himself to Dreyfus. He's diluting and minimizing the threat of anti-Semitism by constantly putting himself as the eternal victim in this conversation. We can have an entire conversation. We had an entire conversation, actually, in one of the last times I was here, about this relationship between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. This is absolutely not an anti-Semitic ploy against the Israeli prime minister. This is, like your other guy, Professor Hawash said, an historic milestone in the history of, in the international history of the Palestine-Israel crisis. I tried to think what could be equivalent to that. The only thing I came up with was the decision in the 1970s to equate Zionism to racism. But this is even much more significant, because these are actual arrest warrants for personal individuals, the leaders of Israel. For me, as an Israeli, this is a very sad moment, given that in the very Declaration of Independence of Israel, it was stated that the state was established to provide shelters for Jews who fled from crimes like genocide. And now we are here 75 years later, where we are, and we can have a conversation of that as well. I just want to say that if, and we, while this is important, an incredible moment, if the international community and the international institutions, the legal international institutions like the ICC and the ICJ, would have been more robust and reactive 20 years ago, I firmly believe we wouldn't be in this situation right now talking about genocide. If they would have taken a much more aggressive stand when Israel started to build the separation wall, when Gaza was put under siege, if the reaction then was more robust, then we wouldn't have a conversation right now to which countries can the Israeli prime minister go without risking arrest.
That's interesting thoughts. Thanks for sharing that, Dr. Ram. Let me go back to Professor Hawash before I go back to my co-host, Saiful Islam Saab. Professor Hawash, we've seen what the US response was. Clearly, President Joe Biden coming out and siding with Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right extremist government. Are you surprised by what he has said? And also, we've seen that the British government, through their spokesman, has said that they will fulfill their obligations under the ICC agreement, should they have to do that, without explicitly saying that they would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu should he step foot on British soil. Your reactions to that, Professor?
Well, first of all, if we go back to the United Nations Security Council resolution, which was only a day before that, there was a real opportunity for Biden to do what his predecessor, oh my God, I've forgotten his name, the US president, when he was leaving before Trump came in, he decided
Obama.
to go. Obama, yeah, he decided to abstain at the United Nations during this period between the two administrations. And a really important resolution was passed, 2334, which said that settlements were illegal. Biden could have been in that same position now, either abstaining or, agreeing to this resolution if he had an ounce of humanity in him, if he wasn't a complete anti-Palestinian racist, because at the end of the day, he accepts that Palestinians must die because Israel has the right to do whatever it wants. So there was an opportunity for a different outcome from that, which would have been a prelude to the to the ICC decision to say that there's international law and everyone is under the law. But exceptionally, Israel, which normally says people choose it to criticize it more than other states, etc. But exceptionally, the international law does not apply to Israel. So I think that first of all, they two could have worked really well together to bring the situation back into some normality by having a ceasefire, the hostages released, and the beginnings of bringing in aid that floods the area. But not only did Biden and his administration choose to oppose the ICC, you had some nutcase congressmen saying that they're going to attack The Hague in the Netherlands if Netanyahu was to be brought there to release him. I mean, it's the craziest thing you can think of, when in fact, if the same was happening to Putin, this was happening to Putin, none of them would be objecting, would they? So why isn't the international law applied equally? We should be strengthening international law to make sure that, and the adherence to it, that everybody must behave under that law. And then for our own prime minister, I think I should write to his university that gave him his degree and say he should withdraw it. This guy, who was a human rights lawyer, has been, when it came to Israel specifically, has been reneging even on the law. He's reneged on many promises as a labor leader. But here, he is refusing to say that the International Criminal Court rules over everyone. They came to this conclusion after many years of thinking whether there was, it had any authority in these areas, and so on, and then to put together this file that Karim Khan, who many people thought would never bring arrest warrants against Israelis, now he's an anti-Semite, and the prime minister here and his home secretary, and that was really telling today, she is responsible for enforcing this. If Netanyahu came to the UK and she said, no, it's nothing to do with me. Well, of course it is. And it's to do with the whole government. They should have done the right thing, like a number of leaders, even Italy.
I agree.
If he came to Netanyahu, if came to Italy, he would face arrest. Instead, they're leaving this murky position that we think it's a legitimate court, but we're not going to say anything now.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Thank you for that, Professor Hawash. Stay there, Dr. Moran, Professor Hawash. I want to go to Saiful Islam Saab. Saiful Islam Saab, to me, and I would love your analysis on this, is that as long as Israel and its far-right leadership keep saying we're defending ourselves, they can basically do whatever the heck they like with impunity and without any question, as long as they say we're defending ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, look, I can see lots and lots of people, including many Muslims, are celebrating this prospect. But I'm sorry to say I am skeptical, and allow me to explain why I'm skeptical. In terms of the actions of the IDF, the Israelis, it's not far different than what it was a year ago. They attacked hospitals, they attacked women, children, disabled, and attacked institutions in schools and so forth from the very beginning. We know that. The only thing that's changed, as far as I can see, is the intensity of it. They're doing it more and more, and it's getting worse and worse for the people in that territory, in that area. Now, a year later, after 40 plus thousands of people having been killed, and they're getting killed on a daily basis, after many human rights organizations recognizing Israel's behavior to have been genocidal, despite all of that, a year later, for the ICC court to simply just issue an arrest warrant, not only against Netanyahu, but also against the Hamas leaders, in circumstances where Netanyahu himself believes that Hamas leader is no longer alive, he's been killed. So I'm just trying to understand what message is being given when two people, Israelis and the victims, if you like, are presented as though they're equal rivals by issuing arrest warrants against both sides in circumstances where one side doesn't exist because the other one is supposed to have been killed anyway. So, and then we have a situation where there's a big question mark over the enforceability of these arrest warrants, because we know that only a number of European nations have expressed that they respect the decision of the ICC and that they will honor it. Not everybody has done so. We know that the United Nations has already flatly rejected it and so forth. So we can see a huge question mark over its enforceability. I think my brother Kamal Hawash said a few minutes ago, he mentioned the issue of the resolution passed about the illegal occupation and so forth. Well, that was passed by the UN and so forth. But what happened then? Everybody in the world recognizes that to be illegal. They continue to do whatever they want illegally. The world does nothing. So to me, is this something genuine, or is it just lip service? I don't know, because as far as I'm concerned, after all of these things, all of those people having been killed and the actions of Israel to date, as far as I'm concerned, anything short of direct action against Israel on the ground is simply not enough. It just does not seem genuine enough to me.
Yeah, I hear you, and that's, I mean, how likely is that going to happen? Very, very unlikely, unless the Arab states start to flex some muscle, which is also very, very unlikely in the region, right? Thank you for that, Saif Islam Saab, for that analysis. Really helpful, really interesting. Let me go back to Dr. Maury Ram, if I may. Dr. Maury, of course, you've been witness to the Trump victory. Who would have thought of it, the fact that Donald Trump would return for part 2 of his administration commencing in January? And we know that Donald Trump has always been pro-Israel, and he's also very close to Benjamin Netanyahu and also many of his far-right administration. However, one thing Trump did say is that he will end all wars, and that would imply the war between Ukraine and Russia, and also the war that we're seeing in the Middle East as well, with Israel and the Palestinian territories and Lebanon. Where do you think this will go from your experience and your academic understanding of that region? Do you think that Trump will be able to get some control over the Middle East conflict so that he can look positive in front of the world, and especially the Gulf countries as well? Because I'm sure the Gulf countries are asserting pressure, whilst they may not be asserting any military pressure, of course, because for tactical reasons with Iran. I'm quite sure they are asserting some kind of pressure behind the scenes to the US and Western allies to do something about the situation, which clearly is not being heeded. Do you think Trump will make any difference?
Sorry, just unmuted myself. Just before I respond to that, I just want to pick up on something that Professor Hawash said about this nutcase in Washington. There is a federal law called the Hague Invasion Act, which officially gives the American president the permission to use any means necessary, including military, to invade the Hague in case of Americans being prosecuted by the International Criminal Court. So it's not just a nutshell.
So there's an actual law, Dr. Ram, like in the US.
It was passed into law in 2002. So it's not just a nut job, although the new administration looks like it's going to be packed by, shall we say, people whose not intellectual, but right, sensible mind is questionable. And I can also respond to a few other things that were said, but let me focus on what you've asked. What will happen now? It's really hard to surmise, but I think we need to think about three main issues. One is what will be the response, not of the US, because we know what it was, they already responded, but the other Western international community, which is obligated to enforcing the ICC. This goes back to the question of enforceability. And this is the first time that a Western ally is directly being prosecuted. So it will be really important to see what are their reaction. And we already see that some states, Ireland, the Netherlands, have announced that they are committed and obligated, while others like Germany and Germany, especially maybe Italy, are undecided. So we're going to see here the basic question of what is the ICC good for if it is not enforced on everyone equally, which is an issue that have been discussed for many years now. And within the general conversation on how international law is skewed against the Palestinians and Palestine because they don't have sovereignty and legal standing among other international actors. That's the first question. The second question is whether the ICC will now go beyond these two arrest warrants and start to prosecute not just Israeli generals, but Israeli soldiers. Many of them have been depicting themselves committing acts which can be codified as crimes against humanity, war crimes. And if this will happen, because Netanyahu will do his best to evade, and now he has expertise in evading legal proceedings against him. We can see it from how he behaves inside Israel. But when this will happen, and when an increasing number of Israelis won't be able to visit any of the states which are signatory or participant to the Rome Statute, this will be huge. And this will be a groundbreaking moment. And then comes the question of, indeed, how will the US respond? And this is one of those cases in which you don't see a lot of daylight, to be honest, between the Biden administration, the Trump administration, the Democrats, the Republicans. It seems that the support for Israel in the US Capitol is still strong. And especially now with Trump coming into power and the fact that he's appointed several hardcore fanatics like Mike Huckabee as the ambassador to Israel, he signals that he maintains his commitment, especially to his donor like Miriam Adelson, who poured money into his campaign, and to his evangelical base, which considers Israel as one of the main things which they hold dear. However, we all know that Trump is less obligated to ideology and has much more of a transactional personality.
Yeah, that's
Trump
true.
goes well. Trump has an interesting rapport with the leader of Saudi Arabia, like Mohammed bin Salman, with the Emirates, with Egypt, with Putin, and Putin is an ally of Iran. So, and one of the main points that Trump wrote on to the White House was, we do not want more wars. We do not want to send money for more wars, neither to Israel or to the Ukraine. So I see actually, and there's already conversation in Israel whether or not Bibi will strike a ceasefire with Hezbollah in order to welcome Trump to the White House.
There you go.
So
We're running out of time, Dr. Ram, but I hear you. Very clear.
So
where
Trump
you're coming
might
from there.
surprise us, actually. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
This ICC
makes
window
sense.
does changes a lot, because now there is an actual warrant out for Bibi, which will compel everyone to decide on what side they're on. That's
exactly. I hear you, and this is a big deal, no matter what people say. Professor Hawash, last 30 seconds to you, if I may. Your quick reactions to what you've heard so far, and we're going to have to end this part of the program, unfortunately.
Sure. First of all, to Brother Saif al-Islam, we either strengthen international law or we have the law of the jungle. So I understand the skepticism, but we need something, and we should be strengthening it. And in terms of Dr. Ram, I agree with him about that there is a law to do with the attack on The Hague. But did you even know that the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, is still a terrorist organization in America, which had an embassy in Washington? I mean, there are some mad things that go on in the United States. But I think the direction of travel is that Israel is becoming increasingly isolated, and rightly so. People on the street should be starting to call for Netanyahu and his government to go.
Gentlemen, we need to leave it there, I'm afraid. Professor Hawash, sorry to interrupt you, but let me thank you, Professor Hawash and Dr. Ram, for your time. Listeners, this is Friday Night Live. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
This Christmas, there will be millions of songs streamed, movies watched, and job searches online. But around 2 million households are living in data poverty, disconnected from the essentials they need to get by. So we're giving away free data to those who need it most. If you're struggling, ask for the National Data Bank in any O2 store. O2, see what you can do.
SIM available in store on National Data Bank, subject to availability. Minimum 25 gig, 18 plus. Terms apply. See o2.co.uk.
Established since 1990, Leagrave Heating Supplies is the largest independent plumbers merchant in the area. And we're the specialist for all types of plumbing and heating, as well as combination boilers and mega flow cylinders. Leagrave Heating Supplies is your first choice for your new bathroom or complete heating system. Visit our showroom at Shoreland Lane, Luton, to see our latest range of quality bathrooms. Or log on to lhsdirect.co.uk. We're stockists of genuine Baxi spares, and we have a showroom in Bedford too. Leagrave Heating Supplies. Call Luton 84 86 88.
Are you thinking of starting a podcast or looking to give your podcast a new home? Why not hire Inspire FM's dedicated recording studio? With rates starting at just £25 per booking, our podcast studio is a fully functional, acoustically treated space for up to 4 people, and it's set up and ready to use as soon as you arrive. For more information or to inquire about booking, email us at info@inspirefm.org or send us a DM on our social media accounts at InspireFM Luton.
The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The most blessed nikah, marriage ceremony, is the one with the least expense spent on it."
Do you have a legal problem? Are you trying to settle a family member? If so, then contact M&K Solicitors. M&K Solicitors are a leading local firm specializing in immigration, family, personal injury, clinical negligence, civil and property law. Our solicitors have over 20 years' experience and are recognized internationally. Our success rate speaks for itself. Take advantage of our free consultations for your first meeting. We also give free advice on Fridays, no appointment needed. That's right, free legal advice. M&K Solicitors. Call 01582 732 503.
With UK Export Finance, I'm fulfilling more export orders from around the world with working capital support.
Export insurance means I'll get paid when exporting to challenging markets.
At UK Export Finance, we believe no viable UK export should fail for lack of finance or insurance. Between 2023 and 2024, we provided £8.8 billion of government-backed trade finance to support UK exports. Learn how we could help you win export contracts, fulfill orders, and get paid. Search UK Export Finance today.
बचपन से सुनते आए हैं ये नहीं कहना वो नहीं करना सवाल नहीं पूछना और फिर इसी रविश से हमारे ज़हनी और माशरती मसाइल उलझते चले गए। हमारे मसाइल हमारे हालात से नहीं हमारे ख्यालात से पैदा होते हैं और ख्यालात दुरुस्त किए जा सकते हैं। मैं हूं आज़ाद और अगर आप भी चाहते हैं कि हम सब आज़ाद हो सकें अपने ही पैदा किए हुए मसाइल से तो बात कीजिए क्योंकि अब बोल के लब आज़ाद हैं तेरे। ओनली ऑन इंस्पायर FM।
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Welcome back to part 2 and the final part of tonight's edition of Friday Night Live on Friday, the 22nd of November, 2024. I'm your host, Abdul Akbar, joined also in the studio by my co-host, Saiful Islam Saab. Assalamu alaikum, Saiful Islam Saab. Hoping I can hear you there, Saiful Islam Saab.
My apology. I was on mute. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And I can't hear you in my earpiece, but hopefully we can resolve that in a moment.
Can you hear me now?
Islam Saab, your reactions to what you heard from our two guests there in part 1. We're going to go on to Islamophobia Awareness Month in a moment as well, listeners. So we will be talking about the very important aspect of Islamophobia Awareness Month, which has been happening by MEND, and we'll find out more about that from the person who organized it in a moment. But so something, your reactions to what you heard from our two guests. I didn't actually know about this act, and I was Googling it during the break, and I think it's called the Hague Invasion Act, which is or the American Service Members Protection Act, which gives America the right to invade The Hague if they need to protect American soldiers, which is bizarre.
Yeah. Look. I mean, I was quite taken aback by the comment from Brother Kamal when he talks about implying that the comments I was making was the law of the jungle, and somehow what the international world is doing is to do with civilized international law. Because as far as I'm concerned, the world is being controlled by only 5 countries. They are the 5 permanent members of the UN. Okay, 193 members of the United Nations, 185 of them coming together cannot make a change unless all 5 of them agree with them, right? That's the situation we're in. And we at the same time talk about democracy and majority rule. What a joke. Now, coming back to this, if the boot was on the other foot, right? And if it was the Palestinians killing Israelis, the world will not be issuing arrest warrants and hoping that those leaders will travel to those countries one day so they can be arrested. They would not be doing that. They would be on the ground physically trying to stop these people from killing innocent women and children. And that's exactly what I said. And I don't know how that is somehow the law of the jungle, but that just astonished me, that comment.
Yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, I didn't quite pick up on that point, but it's a really interesting point because it's one rule for one group of people, another rule for the rest of us. And that definitely does not feel like equality at all. But listeners, I would love to hear from you as well. So don't forget, you can tune into our live feed on YouTube by typing in Inspire FM Luton and searching for Friday Night Live on the live tab, or go into our Facebook page as well, where we are also broadcasting. Share your comments and do like and subscribe as well if you are tuning in. And of course, if you're on the radio, well, 01582 481 822 is the number to call to take part in tonight's program. But let's go straight to our next topic, which is also a very important topic, and it's the topic of Islamophobia. And this is something that, of course, will affect every single Muslim around the world. And I'm sure many of us have been subject to Islamophobic hate crimes at least once in our lives. That's a fact. And I know Benjamin Netanyahu and his government like to talk about anti-Semitism. And I really liked what Dr. Maury Ram said, which is, by them constantly subjecting to anyone who critiques the far right Israeli government as anti-Semitic, is just diluting the whole notion, right? It just doesn't make sense. And they're really diluting this very serious allegation of anti-Semitism, which is a very serious issue. But let's go on to Islamophobia right now. And joining us right now, I'm delighted to welcome to the program Daniel Gillies. I hope I've said that properly. Daniel is the regional manager of Amend in Scotland, and his job often takes him across the country supporting men groups. And he's on the show right now. Assalamu alaikum, Daniel. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam, rahmatullah. Thank you so much, Abdul Akbar, for having us. It's a real privilege to be on the show and join you from all the way up in sunny Scotland this evening.
Do you know what? It's been, you say sunny, but I'm sure it's not. You're being a bit sarcastic there, because we've had our fair share of frost and snow in Luton, and in fact earlier this week it was snowing quite heavily, and we had a couple of layers of snow. Quite interesting. But Daniel, tell us a bit about the work that you've done with Islamophobia Awareness Month, because what is the aim behind this, and what would you say to people who say to people like you and me, Muslims, and Saif Islam Saab, that, yeah, Islamophobia, we know it exists, but it's not a real major problem? How do you go about tackling those types of comments?
Well, it's a real sad reality, but we've been going into this campaign almost over 10 years, so we're a decade into this campaign, and time again we have people asking us the same question, just as you've posed to me just there, about is Islamophobia a real thing? Is this something that's a reality, or is something that Muslims are experiencing in their daily lives? And sadly, it's not only a reality, but it's actually something which is getting worse. We've seen a massive rise, over 300% increase in Islamophobic attacks in the past year, since October 2023. So it's alive and well. But Islamophobia Awareness Month is a campaign that I describe as having two sides of the coin. On the one hand, the campaign is here to raise awareness of Islamophobia, to raise awareness of what people can do to tackle Islamophobia. But on the other side, there's a positive side of things as well, in which the campaign aims to highlight the contributions which Muslims make to British society. And this is something which is sadly often overshadowed. We see that time and time again when it comes to the media, we see all of these articles. We know actually almost 60% of all articles written about Muslims are of a negative tone, and we see many mentions of articles written about extremist Muslims, but very rarely do we see articles which are talking about the valuable contribution that Muslims make to society in all sectors, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's sports, and the media. So what we want to say is there's a real success story of Muslims in Britain, and we're part of the fabric of the society. That's something that should be celebrated. So whilst we want to raise awareness of the issues facing the Muslim community, we also want to highlight the massive contributions we make.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. And Daniel, if you don't mind me getting a bit personal with you, and I know the plan wasn't to get personal, but you seem like somebody who reverted to Islam, and I'm only saying that purely because of your name. And forgive me if I don't mean to cause any offense, but I would love to know if that's the case, and if that is the case, just a brief summary of your journey and what you've experienced in terms of Islamophobia, and any insights you can offer from that direction, coming from maybe as not a Muslim and somebody who reverted to Islam. Again, that's the assumption I'm making, but please tell us more.
Yeah, no, alhamdulillah. I embraced Islam. I say later in life, although I think it's a bit of a young man. So I decided to leave it was a small town in the west coast of Scotland that I grew up in, a wonderful place, very cozy, but not a whole lot of diversity. And I was always quite intrigued with the world beyond the borders. And I put my backpack on at the age of 18 and hit the road. And the first place I traveled to was actually Turkey. And I came back a couple of times, but I really returned to Scotland when I was 21. So 3 years later, and I spent some time in quite a lot of different Muslim countries. So from Malaysia to Morocco to Lebanon, Palestine, and returning to Scotland, I felt a real sense of something that was missing. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I very, earnestly, I really tried hard to re-embrace this kind of identity of a Western young man in college, university, trying to get involved in all the different things that were going on in uni life. But I kind of felt that sometimes a bit of a resistance. On one hand, I loved being part of the university community, but on the other hand, I felt just not fully satisfied with things like the student nightlife and that kind of thing. I wanted something more, and so I found a local masjid, and alhamdulillah, some wonderful brothers supported me on the way, and very quickly took shahada. So, but I'd say it was over the span of about 3 years or so. But just thinking what you mentioned there, with regards to Islamophobia, I've been a Muslim for a good few years now, and it's very, it's a very strange experience. It's an interesting experience being a white Muslim, and in a sense, you're a kind of minority within a minority sometimes. What I noticed over the years, though, is that people, generally speaking, are, I've never, experienced a violent Islamophobic attack against me. But what I have experienced is subtle Islamophobia from people who have no idea that I'm a Muslim. They'll just see a white guy. They just see a white guy, and I actually, a couple of incidents have taken place in taxis, where there'll be a discussion about a local chunk of land that's been put aside to construct a masjid, and then they start going on about that, saying, "Oh, what do you think about this? Oh, I'm not sure about those people. I don't really trust them," or whatever, and I'm just sitting there and thinking, do I intervene, or do I just kind of try to avoid confrontation?
No, I laugh, but it's actually quite serious. It's quite serious. Thank you for sharing that, Daniel. Let me go to Saiful Islam Saab, who's also listening in as well. Saiful Islam Saab, your reactions to Islamophobia in terms of your experience of it, especially through your awareness of the legal ecosystem in this country.
Nothing. I haven't experienced anything direct, but as Brother Daniel says, there is obviously a lot of subtle Islamophobia out there that it's difficult to put your finger on as well. I'll give you an example. I'm sure you remember our very own Saida Warsi, who used to be the chairman of the Conservative Party. From such a position, her first complaint, I think, some of the first complaints against what's been happening was the discussions about Islam and Muslims over the dinner tables and so forth. So she was really speaking about Islamophobia. And look what happened to her as a result. Because when you start speaking what you should be speaking about, making a stand for yourself, slowly, things happen that without you realizing it's happening. So all I'm saying is that, unfortunately, subtle ones are probably more dangerous than the direct ones, because at least you're able to identify the direct ones and do something about it, whereas the subtle ones are dangerous, and they slowly eat away, and then eventually gets to a level when you suddenly realize that whole society hates you. And that's the dangerous one, in my view.
What a fantastic point. And I think, Daniel, this comes down to a lot of workplace trainings that we've seen over the last few years around unconscious bias as well, right? There's a lot of bias at work that people who are not of the Islamic faith would have against Muslims, and they may not be even aware of it. Is this something that you're trying to raise awareness of as well?
Definitely. And this kind of campaign is really trying to make sure, and the theme this year is really trying to reach out to everybody, Muslim and non-Muslim. And we really believe that our interactions with non-Muslims is key to tackling Islamophobia. This isn't something Muslims are, should be dealing with on our own. What the I Am campaign does is we reach out to organizations across the country and organize events or support them to deliver their own events. One of the most popular events is the I Am workshop. So this can be hired and delivered by a member of the I Am team. And it's a fantastic opportunity to look at the definition of Islamophobia, trying to identify exactly what is it, how does it permeate into all different institutions, etc. But also, where are some of the root causes of Islamophobia? We look at the media, for example, we look at politics, and then trying to suggest some of the best ways that we think people can tackle Islamophobia. And the theme this year, Seeds of Change. Seeds of Change is trying to invite everybody to look at their the small actions that we can do, small but brave actions in our daily lives to make a difference. And as you've just, using that example in the workplace, we have, up and down the country, chat in the coffee room, and sometimes it's a bit of banter, sometimes difficult to understand, as you said, about where does banter end, and, a bit of fun and a bit of joking, and then sometimes maybe somebody can actually end up quite offended. I've heard similar stories from school children. I work in the community, and I've spoken to some, many young people about their experiences, and they tell me, they're still experiencing this kind of thing. This stuff isn't left in the 60s or the 80s. This kind of thing is still real, not only from pupils, but also from teachers, most alarmingly. So it's not just about in the workplace. Sadly, some of our youngest and even our most vulnerable in society are being affected by this. And we know that it has a very serious impact on mental health as well, and can have a big impact on the academic experiences and ability, the ability for a young Muslim to thrive in school can be really hindered by the effects of Islamophobia. So by getting involved in hosting the I Am exhibition as well, it's another fantastic way. Some places they just don't have the time.
Danny, let me come back to you on that and how we can get involved, how people can get involved in the Seeds of Change in the I Am exhibition in a minute. But I just quickly want to let on the line another guest in a moment. But what can people like Saif Islam Saab and myself do when we go back to work and raise awareness of Islamophobia? Because I feel a bit awkward doing that. But before you answer that question, let me just try go back to our guest, Masood Ahmed, who's the former Assistant Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain. He's on the line. Assalamu alaikum, Masood.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, brother?
Thanks for joining us. We're grateful for your time this evening.
Yeah, just to clarify, I am still serving as an Assistant Secretary General.
Are you right? Okay, well, I will clarify that with my production team later on, so apologies about that mistake. So he is still Masood Ahmed, serving Assistant Secretary General of the MCB. Thank you for clarifying that. I can't speak English tonight. But let me ask you this, Masood Saab, which is, I know I've only got you for a few minutes, but let me ask you about Islamophobia. And, do you feel that the government's response to Islamophobia, either the former government or the current Labour government, are they doing enough? Especially, Saif Islam Saab made a very good point earlier. I'm not sure if you heard it, which was about Sayyid Dawarsi. The minute she started talking about the Muslim cause, she effectively was sidelined and even was about to be investigated before she resigned, was the rumor at least. Is Islamophobia getting worse in this country, and is the government doing enough? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. I know Inspire FM is doing a lot of good work, and thank you for highlighting this very important issue. A lot of Muslims are very, very concerned, very worried, and we have even heard that people or come across people who have contemplated even leaving the country if they have a choice. But certainly from an Islamic point of view, from a Muslim angle, we say that, wherever you are there in your own right, and you stand for justice. Whichever government we talk about, I don't think anyone is doing enough. I don't think anyone can do enough. But certainly what we want to see, and our campaigns are, they have been for a long time. Saeed Dawarsi, I was in the Parliament just a few days ago when there was an event hosted by, Manchester MP, Mr. Afzal Khan, and she spoke at that event. And we speak frequently about some of these issues. I know she has been trying to publicize some of her own experiences, but also her own perspective, and many of them are spot on in terms of some of the discrimination, some of the blatant Islamophobia that we see clearly, some of the events in the north of England where you are or not far from demonstrates that you just need a bit of rumor. Somebody just put something in social media, and it creates a lot of problem and mayhem, really. And it's not helped, unfortunately, by politicians from different parties, just kind of making cheap shot at it, basically trying to capitalize on people's worries and fears, and then using Islam as a scapegoat. And this is not justified. This is not acceptable. And we must all unite. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. We should unite and hold fast to the rope of Allah and not be divided. This is a time for us to unite as a community, for us to do what we believe is right, and for us to stand with the people of all backgrounds, because Islam is not for black or white people. Islam is a religion that stands for the justice, for the fairness, and especially for the oppressed, whichever community they come from, whichever ethnic background, and even whichever religion they come from. So we know.
And sorry to interrupt, I would suggest that we are quite united on this topic, right? I mean, do you have any thoughts around that? I mean, I think the Muslim community is united.
I think certainly Muslim community is united, but I think there is also a lack of, there are gaps within our community, lack of understanding about how to respond. Some people are very passive and other people are very aggressive. And I think the right approach is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you use your wisdom, and we have to do what is right, what is wise, what is sensible and pragmatic, in the sense that we don't create havoc in trying to solve one type of problem. We do what is sensible, and that's where we need to unite. So the strategy is what's needed. And in fact, coincidentally, tomorrow we're holding a very big conference in the East End of London, where we'll be talking precisely about a topic where we want to strategize and unite the leadership of within the Muslim community. We are inviting the leaders from across the board to think how we can address this issue and how we can challenge Islamophobia, not just as a reaction, but in a proactive way, in a strategic way, not just in the immediate challenges that we're facing, but also in the long term, thinking long term.
I think that's really important, Masood Saab, because do you know why it's important? Is because even in the current climate where we're seeing Palestinians being butchered by the IDF, and even Lebanese nationals now being butchered by the IDF, this whole thing about anti-Semitism, why is it that anti-Semitism is given so much weighting, but when it comes to Islamophobia, no one bats an eyelid? And that's a major discrepancy that I'm seeing. But Masood Saab, I know you have to go, so I'm gonna let go of you, but be very grateful for your time. So thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you very much. And I'm sure the honorable guests in the studio, they will continue the debate. And thank you, brother Abdul Akhtar. And may Allah bless you. Keep up the good work. Assalamu alaikum.
Let me put that to Saif al-Islam Saab, yourself first, if I may, and then I want to get some closing remarks from Daniel Gillies, our guest on the line. Saif al-Islam Saab, why is it that anti-Semitism gets more weighting, in your opinion, amongst the mainstream press, amongst society, but when there's Islamophobic hate crimes or Islamophobia, no one bats an eyelid?
Well, I think the answer is pretty obvious, isn't it? Everybody knows it because it's happening. You don't need an answer from me. You just have to open the papers. I mean, look, just the BBC article, right? I just read today that you helpfully shared with me about the arrest warrant of Netanyahu. And if you read this article, you would think that Hamas or the Palestinians are a monster, no different to the IDF and the Israelis. In circumstances where we've got 40,000 deaths of women and children who have been killed violently by this side without justification, right? This is how they are being presented. So, I mean, look, all you have to do is just pick up the papers and see the injustices in the world, right? Now, unfortunately, the Ummah, the Muslims are, we are simply not doing enough. We are just not doing enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's back to the point that Brother Masood made. There's passive people amongst us and there's aggressive people amongst us, and finding that balance is really important. Thank you for that, Saif al-Islam Saab. Daniel, last words with you before we close tonight's program. Your reactions to that, and also, more importantly, I would say, is how can we help? Well, how can the ordinary Muslim help raise awareness?
Sadly, just the reality of Islamophobia in this country does not fit the narratives of many of our media outlets, and I think that's what's been mentioned by the guests as well. Just getting the message out there is it's a real effort. One of the highlights of working in this field is seeing the growth of the campaign, though, and I've noticed a massive difference in the past 2-3 years. I think a lot of organisations are starting to organically get engaged. We've seen universities up and down the country, University of Edinburgh, University of Westminster getting involved. We've also seen football clubs getting involved as well. Lots of different people from lots of different places. It's not just Muslim organisations anymore. So that's a fantastic thing, and that needs to be celebrated. With regards to how to get involved, one of the first things and one of the most easy things to do, I think would recommend everybody does, is to sign up as a supporter. You can sign up as a supporter on the IAM website. This can also be done as an organization, in an organizational capacity as well. So you can get your local business, your companies, charities, etc., signed up, local authorities. With regards to actually getting a bit more actively involved, there are a range of trainings available by the IAM team. So we have the general workshop, which just gives a brief overview, but we also have things like bystander training. So just coming back to what Abdul Akbar mentioned earlier on about the kind of this these kind of what we might describe as more subtle Islamophobia in the workplace.
We're running out of time. Just Daniel, can I ask you for the website really quickly, because we've only got like 10 seconds left. So if we can just get the website from you, thank you.
So it's Islamophobia-awareness.org. Islamophobia-awareness.org.
Amazing.
So everybody's going to sign up as a supporter, and we're looking forward to getting that flood of supporter sign-ups as well.
Daniel,
thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much from Mend and yourself, and keep up the great work. Islamophobia-awareness.org. Grateful for that. Listeners, this has been Friday Night Live with me, Abdul Akbar, and Saiful Islam Slab. Until next week, take care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.